Melinda here with The Veil. I'm the creative director, and today I want to show you the brand new James collection. I've designed this collection by color, so that's how I've laid it out here on the table so that you can see how every single piece goes together seamlessly. I'll start from left to right. The first thing we have over here is the stunning Han wall covering. Han is a linen string ground. So if you look really closely, there are tiny little linen strings placed on the surface of a non-woven ground. The design itself actually is a very sentimental story. The design I found in and amongst my grandfather's things when he passed away. He left a box of all his favorite travel bits and pieces for my father, and we went through them together, and I found this beautiful document that he picked up in Peking when he was traveling there in the 70s. So this design is actually adapted from that original document. So this is really a tribute to my grandfather. It is a processional document that shows a ceremonial walk towards the temple, the Han Temple, and they call it the Temple of Heaven. So that beautifully and seamlessly transitions into the rest of the collection in this terracotta color palette. This is underneath here. This is our first foray into recycled goods. We've always been environmentally conscious. This is a cotton and polyester blend, but the polyester has been recycled, so it's still environmentally friendly. This design pulls in those beautiful terracotta colors as well as some deep dark midnight and taupe, and also a little bit of black. This is the first design that I've done that's a little bit more geometric. In nature, it's a beautiful fabric for draping, for upholstery. You can mix it with something a little bit more organic for that masculine, feminine vibe. And then we have the mini version of that in the terracotta. This again uses recycled polyester as well. We've backed this in an acrylic so that it's ready to go for upholstery, and it really glistens beautifully in the sun, has some matte chenille threads as well as a more sateen thread. I love that contrast. So this is Farah, my favorite trim within the collection. And there's so many different processes that went into making this, and it makes it really unique and special. So the ground is linen, and then we have a full machine crewel embroidery on the background. It's all hand embroidered, and it is all hand beaded on top of that ground. The beads themselves, if you look really closely, are glass beads, and so we actually had to have these made in the Czech Republic and shipped to India, because I'm very specific about the type of tortoiseshell bead that I wanted. And I think it just adds that extra level of luxury to this piece. The yarn, if you look closely at that, is a very fine coiled metal looped around a thread, and so the metal is then embroidered on top of a couched area, so it is raised a little bit. That is called Indian Zardozi. The Zari yarns, and then the method is called Zardozi. And this is a very luxurious type of embroidery that is done usually for ceremonial wear in India, usually for weddings or for any sort of celebrational fashion. And we've transitioned that concept over into the home space, and mixed it with all these different techniques to create this stunning trim. Next we have Mademoiselle. This took 3 years of development, so this really was a labor of love. The original design I did using collage and just sitting and cutting out pieces of paper and layering them until I had this beautiful design. I really wanted the look to be fashion oriented, so that's where that I guess where that idea comes from. So this is a sateen lace almost. It's a die-cut lace. And then on top of that, we have embroidered multiple layers of vinyl leather, faux leather. And it just took forever to get it right, but it came out beautifully. This can be used on the leading edge of a drapery. This can be used around the bottom of a sofa, down a pillow, basically anywhere you like. And then we created the mini version for you. And I think this is adorable around a little pillow. You can even actually double this up and you can have kind of two next to each other. So 2 different tapes there for you to use with these fabrics. So this is sizzle tape. This is the 3rd and final trim in this palette. This is also on a linen ground, also hand beaded all the way down the edges of the squiggle. And each one of these applique threads down the middle is actually dyed flax. So it is very unique and special, and I think it looks great. A more organic design next to the more geometric designs. I like that contrast a lot. Okay, this has been quite a favorite. I think it's a great everyday piece. This pattern is called Killian check and is actually based on the Maasai tribe ceremonial wear. They have these beautiful, almost, they kind of feel like they're Scottish kilts, and that's where it is originally came from. The design was imported into Africa, into Kenya, by the Scottish, and then adapted by the Kenyan people and utilized by the Maasai as a protective cover from the sun and weather. And so this is inspired by that. And this is a cotton and linen blend and can be used for upholstery and drapery, and comes in a bunch of colors. From our previous collection, just to show you that the colors do continue throughout the seasons, we have our Georgia cloth in autumn. And yeah, we can mix and match between every collection. So you can throw in this guy as an upholstery and have some autumnal pillows going on. Last but not least, our Adobe wall covering. Adobe is pretty cool because it is a craft paper. So if you look at the ground, it has a very modeled look to it. And then on top of that, we have a surface print, monotone, and the ink is slightly sheer, so you can see that craft paper come through the ink. This is also based on my trip to Kenya from last year, and it really kind of replicates the patterns that you see in the mud huts that the Maasai live in. So that's where that inspiration comes from. This palette is the Pine color palette in the James collection. I've laid it out here so you can see how everything goes together really beautifully. There's touches of bronze and mushroom as well as creams. So you can use light and bright colors with this pine, or you can go deep and moody. On the table right in front of me is a fabulous screen printed design. There are, I think, 4 screens we used to create this, and in one of the screens we decided to use a metallic lacquer ink so that when it catches the light, there's just a tiny bit of shimmer up against that matte ground. The design itself shows hibiscus flowers. This is reminiscent for me of my grandmother's house in Marco Island when I was growing up, and the retro sort of, I guess, 70s but also 90s design kind of reminds me of the house itself. So that's where the inspiration came from for this one. And the flowers themselves are very geometric in nature and very graphic, rather than how a flower usually would be painted or drawn more organically or more painterly. I love the contrast of masculine and feminine features within this design. Moving into the Mademoiselles, I've talked about these before, but these colors are really interesting because I've done the bronze leather with the dark bottle green leather, and then the cream of the sateen really pulls out the creams in the wall covering. And the sizzle tape really ties together the blues and the greens in this collection, and I've put the spring colorway on a white linen ground instead of the neutral. Adobe, this is the mushroom color. I think the pine and the mushroom palettes look beautiful together, and the Killian check has a black thread running through it rather than a white thread, so you can pull out those blacks within the wall covering here. I haven't talked about this guy yet. This is a really fun pattern because of the technique used and the technologies used. This pattern is called Butabu and is also based on the trip that I took to Kenya and the textures in the mud huts along the side of the houses in the Maasai tribes. This is on a mica ground. So the color is just placed on top of that mica to create a sheen. And then on top of that, we digitally printed the design. So, and it's actually 3D ink that we used and 3D printing that we used. So there is a little raised area to create that modeled effect. Lastly, we have another hibiscus design that's just a little bit more traditional. And this is the pine color again. Very matte inks throughout. Screen printing always is so luxurious. I mean, it's weird, but I love the smell of it, and it's very traditional, and it's in line with, you know, having this inspiration come from my grandparents' house. So those very matte inks, I don't know, they just give this retro Florida vibe that I love. In front of me is a mixture of color palettes in the James collection. Predominantly, we're looking at the blueberry, but I love adding in obsidian to really highlight the darker areas within some of these wallpapers. I've also thrown in some of the lighter pearl and mushroom and silver and gold. So really, it's a very versatile collection, and you can go modern, you can go traditional, you can go kind of dark and moody, you can go bright and fun. There's a lot that you can do with this. So what I wanted to show you here was these two dark obsidian color trims that have little bits of that pretty, almost periwinkle blue that shine through, and they look wonderful with the shawl wall covering in blueberry and the hibiscus Noreen check in blueberry as well. You can pull in the gold and silver tape of Mademoiselle in the mini. Also, the wider tape looks so good with him. And that also lends itself really well to the mini deco in the pearl and the mushroom. So you can mix and match anything, really. I haven't talked about Elizabeth yet. So this was named after Her Majesty, the late Queen. Just very decadent and beautiful trim. All hand embroidered. The entire surface has been touched with some beautiful bead. When it catches the light, it shimmers. I can see this on just a plain drapery, leading edge from ceiling to floor in any of the colors. And that looks beautiful in either the blueberry or the obsidian. Our Mademoiselle in blueberry has a different color ground than the other colors of Mademoiselle. It has a more taupe and moody sateen to match the background of the hibiscus wall coverings. Instead of using that obsidian color, you can also just do a straight match with blue on blue. Very popular color in the United States. You guys love your blues. The mini deco and the Killian check in blueberry to really liven up that blue palette. In this collection, I really focused on making sure that there was a wide range of neutrals. When I am out working with interior designers across the country, across the world, I always hear that they're looking for warm neutrals, cool neutrals, a mix of neutrals, not just one kind. So within this collection, I did a very earthy sort of mushroom tone that leads into a very kind of warm clay almost. And then the trim in the sizzle tape actually leads you from one neutral to another. So you can actually use this trim with the terracottas, but also with the mushrooms, and then also with the creams. Same goes for the Elizabeth tape in Pearl. It has a lot of different colors of neutral within it. Some pink tones, some cooler tones, and yellow tones. And you really can use this with any palette within the collection, all the way from the blues to the blacks to the mushrooms, and then of course with the pearls. Then I have a very, very crisp white in the Butabu, and then more of a cream in the Adobe. So you really cover all your bases and your neutrals in this collection.